I'm going to ask you to do something that I don't love to do when I'm in your seat, but I think it is important, which is to turn to a neighbor and say a word or two, not a sentence, just a word or two about how you're doing right now. So take a moment to find your word or two. And if you don't find somebody, just join two other people, right? If you're a third, it's okay. You can join two people. These are long sentences. Okay, and when you've said your word or two, that's it. Just go back to your special cushion or seat. Sweet that people want to connect. Okay. I'm noticing today the room is set up in this like semicircle, which I really am liking. It's really nice to be able to see everybody. So let's begin with a little meditation. Is it anyone's first time here? Welcome. Yeah, look around. Other Sangha members so you can say hi during the break. So we'll start with a little practice, a little meditation practice for about 25 to 30 minutes. And then we'll have a break, and then we'll have some Dhamma reflections, wisdom talk kind of vibe. And I always like to start with some chanting. And so I'm going to pull up my chant book. Let's see. Many of you by now know this, and I highlighted what we're going to chant. And this is paying refuge to the Buddha, or not paying refuge, honoring, offering reverence to the Buddha, the historical Buddha. And also, I always feel like it's kind of like a magic spell that awakens the Buddha inside of us. And so feel free to chant along or just listen. I always like to put my hands in a prayer position in front of my heart. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Letting that settle in your system. And seeing if there's any wiggle or shifting needed before we settle here. You might want to have your eyes open to start, or it might feel really good to already go inward. And so coming in, you might have been moving at one speed, and we want to kindly allow ourselves to slow down. So it's not an immediate stop. It's a process to come into some settling. If it feels good for you, you might take a few full breaths on purpose. You even can make sounds exhaling out of your mouth if you want to. Oh. And just reminding you that we're many people sharing space here. And so while we practice without sharing words. It's okay if sneezes or coughs happen or giggles, or we're not practicing in a vacuum. We're practicing with alive bodies. And so, even now, even right here at the beginning, you might allow yourself to open to the soundscape that we're sharing. Letting yourself receive the sounds. Right here. Noticing how there's sounds that arise and pass away, pockets of quiet. You might notice that there's sounds outside of your body, sounds of the environment. And there might be sounds inside your body, digestive sounds, sounds of thoughts. And then including the rest of your body here, feeling the weight of your body resting on seat, on cushion. As a whole, you might feel the shape or posture of your body right now. And as you sit here, you might recall just from the inside the other beings, the other bodies that are in this room. And then, even outside of the space we're in, you might recall some of the trees that are in the backyard here in front. Taking all the time you need to arrive here. And so, as we move into quiet practice together, it can be sweet to allow the mind to have a home base, have a place to rest, to return to. We started with sound as one of those places. That might be the place where the mind gets pointed during this practice, returning to sound. As sometimes it feels good to bring the attention closer to the body and letting home base be this body, this posture. And of course, if you have a familiar home base, some folks use breath, metta practice, feeling the empowerment of you as a practitioner to choose what feels right for practice tonight. Throughout practice tonight, if there's a moment where you get caught in a thought, or potentially with a sound or with a body sensation, offer a practice. It's kind of like a labeling practice of saying, not me, not mine, and then returning to your home base. Not me, not mine. Seeing if you can reconnect to your home base. Interested again in your home base. As we come towards the end of our formal practice time tonight, we can bring in a little touch of appreciation, a little touch of joy, mudita. So take a moment here to reflect on purpose. The moment today that either you found a little smidge or a big smidge of joy, or perhaps it was through witnessing someone else's joy. Recalling that moment, that feeling. Letting it pervade your body, your heart, mind. Ringing the bell. So just like we took our time to arrive, we can take our time to transition and to break. There's no rush at all. Let's keep this hall quiet for folks that want to keep sitting or practicing. And otherwise, out there, you can socialize. You could even peek outside. And if you want to share the memory of joy from today with another, then we can just keep generating mudita together. All right, we'll be back in about 7 minutes. All right, welcome back. Did anyone share some joys? Did it happen or did we forget? Huh? Forgot. Does anyone want to maybe one or two? Yes. Yeah. Stunning flowers. Yes. Thank you. But it just had to come out. It just had to come out. One other one. Yes, an old friend being here visiting the Yuba River. Was there another part to that? Oh, was there more to that? The Yuba River, the old friend, Scott. Ah, all the swimming that's happening. Yes, yes, beautiful. Tonight we're not even talking about joy, but it just felt right. It just felt right. Yeah, we are now. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm Gavrila for those of you that I haven't met. Felt like I wanted to say that. And it's funny, last time I was here, Adam was teaching and um, he had decided to change his topic and was asking if anyone even pays attention to the topic, which I think still remains a mystery to us as teachers. But I did the same thing. I was going to talk about one thing. I was actually going to talk about this ritual called uposatha, which is related to the moon cycle. It's like a really ancient. It actually is a. It was before. It was like Vedic ritual that the Buddha adopted around reflecting on ethics. But for those of you, because we're gonna have a new moon on Wednesday, and so usually you do it around the new moon, the full moon. For those of you that will be with me in my Buddhism Beyond Patriarchy class, we will still explore that. For those of you that are curious what that is, there is a flyer on the bulletin, so you can find that out. We're starting on Thursday. So it feels like that's going to be covered, and I'm sure I will anyways teach about it at another time. And what I found to be way more intrigued with, it's kind of been something I'm chewing on lately. I guess I can say my new title is Becoming and Unbecoming. Hmm. Yeah, becoming and unbecoming. So I was remembering there was, I guess it was about 2 years ago now. I had the great benefit of getting to be like the meditation teacher, the Dharma teacher for a 10-day pilgrimage on the Camino de Santiago. It's beautiful. And it was my first time there. I had my friend and colleague was the one who set up and organized all the pieces, all the logistical pieces, and then I got to offer teachings each day. And so I was remembering this. It was like the first day of our walk. So for those of you, maybe some of you have done it. I know actually some of you have done it here. So usually you walk all day. There's different paths to this holy site. And we were walking from France through the Pyrenees into Spain. And so we had just done our first day of walking, in some miraculous way, something like 15 of us had actually shown up in Europe, had gathered together. We had started walking and we arrived to the first place we were staying. And it was this like beautiful, it was just so picture perfect. It was like kind of rainy. And there we were staying in this little kind of cottage that was just surrounded by green hills and sheep, like that kind of setting. And um, I sat down to give my first Dharma talk. There was this like gorgeous window behind me so everyone could still see the night kind of coming. And I started to speak about the three characteristics. Many of you are probably familiar, right? So these are the characteristics that the Buddha taught that every phenomena, any conditional phenomena in our world, it has these characteristics. That's dukkha, which is like unsatisfactoriness. There's anicca, this like changing nature, not permanent. And there's anatta, not self. I go through this whole talk. I start talking about the 5 foundations of mindfulness, open up to questions. And one of the participants is like, I get most of what you are saying, but what is anatta? What is this? This not self, right? I mean, look around in our room, right? We're like these independent beings, right? So many things in this space feel independent. The flowers, this computer, right? What is anatta? And yet the Buddha is saying it's in everything. It's in everything, this aspect of not self. And that when we don't see this clearly, this is the basis for so much of our ignorance. This sense of separateness, this sense of self. So I felt like when this participant, when she asked that question, it just felt like this is the path. What is anatta? This is one of the paths, right? One of the doorways to find out for oneself how can the experience of not self be touched? So I in no way sit up here saying I know deeply what anatta is, but I can absolutely say that I am in process, discovering it. And so I thought tonight we'd spend some time co-discovering it, unwrapping this deep exploration of not self. And kind of one very common way we can start to touch self and not self is this identification with me and mine, right? This way that we feel like things, people, beings belong to us, mine. Or just the identity, the strength of our identity. This is who I am. And I want to really normalize that. I think this is just true as a practitioner on the path, that oftentimes we're trying to understand these profound teachings with our mind that loves things that are concrete. Like, how does the mind find not self? It's like the most ambiguous experience with our thinking mind, right? It's kind of this weird place of exploration. So I was finding, I want to lift this book. This is an amazing book, Seeing That Freeze, Rob Burbea. Rob Burbea, I actually think is how it's pronounced. Amazing, amazing book. And I was exploring anatta through some of his teachings. And what I was noticing is that when the Buddha talks about anatta, he doesn't describe what is the self. Most of his teachings, I haven't seen a teaching where he describes what is the self, but usually he's describing what isn't. So this isn't, this isn't, this isn't, not me, not mine, not me, not mine. So there's one teaching from the Buddha where he says, what do you think? If a person were to carry off or burn or do as she likes with the grass, twigs, branches, and leaves here in Jetta's Grove, that's probably where they were during this talk, would the thought occur to you, it is us that this person is carrying off, burning, or doing with as she likes? And then the response from the practitioners is, no, Venerable Sir. Why is that? Because those things are not ourself, nor do they belong to ourself. Just so, practitioners, whatever is not yours, let go of it. Your letting go of it will lead you to your welfare and happiness for a long time. And what is not yours? Form is not yours. Vedana, which is like feeling tone, is not yours. Perception, mental formations, consciousness is not yours. Let go of it. Your letting go of it will lead you to your welfare and happiness for a long time. There's a lot that he just named that's not yours. Pretty sure that kind of covered the basis, right? Isn't that what does that mean? So for me, what has really helped me in becoming more intimate with this exploration is to actually start to notice how I experience the self. And where I find it most accessible is through the body, is through feeling the body. So feeling when we start to cultivate a self, and another word I'll use there is a becoming, becoming more of me or mine. And then, of course, we can also explore the feeling of unbecoming, less of me, not mine. So, this feeling of becoming, this feeling of self becoming more present. So, I guess I'm even curious right now, even just to hear a little popcorn from folks, if there's a place you have, experience you have where you feel less of a sense of self, less of a me. I wonder if there's anyone who would name places, moments. Yeah. In nature. In nature. Less, right? Yeah. Less becoming. And unbecoming, maybe. Yeah. There's no boundary in nature. Thank you. Yeah. Is there another? Yeah. Yeah. Every morning. Yeah. Great. Yes. Right. Yes. So morning dog walk outside, beginning of the day. Yeah. And is there also for you like this unboundaried, or would you describe it in a different way? Oh, yeah. Space. Yes. Sure. Space. I love that. Yeah. So there's things in this space, but the presence of space is most felt. Sounds like. Right. So I love this. This is the direction of the unbecoming, right? So powerful to start to hone in on moments, experiences. Maybe it happens in meditation sometimes. This unbecoming, this unwinding of me, right? This connection. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, the heat. Yeah, yes. Beautiful, beautiful. So this way of like being in suffering around the heat in the evening, not being able to sleep, and then feeling this like cord, this connection to others that are also suffering, maybe even suffering worse. And this kind of becoming less personalized. Yeah, that's such a beautiful way to describe it, right? When experience creates less of this personalized experience. This is happening to me instead of it's kind of just happening. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and so we'll kind of switch channels and explore the opposite, this personal, this becoming, the feeling of becoming. I would guess for many of us, I know it's true for me, a lot more of my time is I experience as becoming than unbecoming. Am I alone in that? I see some head nods. Yeah. 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 You know, a sweet place to start to sense the feeling of self is even when you sit down to meditation, either alone or in a group, right? There can be this like, this is how I should be, right? I'm going to close my eyes. I'm not going to make a peep. You know, this kind of like, I think of it like the extra added layer of doing as meditator, right? And this can be felt internally or it can also be external, right? I want to kind of take on a form and seem like I know what I'm doing, or inside, right? This kind of inner conflict of kind of like wrestling ourselves into meditation. So even I want to just invite you because I'm going to give a bunch of different examples. And so you might just kind of feel into when I describe these what that feels like in your body. Because the more we can feel that, the more we can make it conscious, the more we can start to label it as not that, not that. That's not the direction. Being a good meditator. I think about, oh, I have this so often on retreat. Everybody goes into silence. And then there's like the dining hall situation for those of you that have been on retreat, right? We're all meditating and then we go to the dining hall to eat. And it's like everyone puts on their like 2 miles per hour, skillful, reflective serving experience onto their plates. And these lines take like 20 minutes or more. And I can feel for myself almost like there's actually like a restrictive, contracted quality in my body. There's a holding. And usually over a retreat, there's an unwinding around, right? How do I put this down a little bit? You know, where am I in retreat and actually becoming more? So much, I want to be careful too, because as we start to recognize this, it's not another place than that I'm doing it wrong, I'm getting this wrong, right? We can even start to become attached to the anatta reflection. But it's actually just bringing this curiosity, this softening, this interest. Oh, look at that. Look at what it feels like. Let me feel what it feels like to become, to build up myself. Right. I even notice, like as a teacher, ooh, you know, you sit up a lot of times. I'm sitting up here, people are facing me. And it's really easy for my system to take on a little bit more of a structure than I usually live in, right? You know, to even walk outside of that door and have like many pairs of eyes watching me come sit down, you know, it's like, oh, did I just trip? Oh, did I? Oh, God, she's not a Dharma teacher. Look at right? So, especially like positions of power when we're playing a role, right? I'm sure people in here are healing practitioners, teachers, right? Whatever it is, whatever way, moments that you're present with public, you know, eyes facilitators. So kind of noticing, am I adding on? am I adding on? For me, my path as a teacher is as much as possible is to take off, to take off, to take off. But it's an ongoing practice, right? So to again, feel to feel that movement in the body, it probably shows up for each of us in different ways, right? That adding, that becoming. And then there's even like touchier subjects. I was thinking about defensiveness, right? Like when you're in relationship with another and someone's like, maybe someone you live with is like, you didn't replace the toilet paper. Just a simple one, right? Where there's like, wait, but just this reaction of protecting self, like there's something to protect, right? And feeling what that does in relationship, right? And that's like a small scale defensiveness, perhaps. I'll notice sometimes there's like a taste of defensiveness when I'm trying to prove that I know something or that I'm right, right? These little qualities, just asserting oneself in conversation, right? Subtle, subtle, but really unpleasant if you feel for it. Good teaching. I've noticed too, we live in a primarily white city, white county. Our Sangha's pretty white. And so anytime there's something that comes up about potentially racist experiences that happen in our community, which they totally do in our Sangha, in our community, ooh, it gets so touchy, right? Everyone's like, I'm not racist. Never, right? I did a course. I have a best friend who's Black, something like that, right? And what happens in that is we totally close down. We close down our receptivity. We close down our openness to what is here and how do I actually join in it and learn about it, right? So just to also acknowledge in that, like the societal pressures, the cancel culture, right, where we're all so often defending against not wanting to be seen as a way which actually fortifies self, right? It really can get in the way of real understanding, right? Or conversations about oppression, right? Well, that wasn't me, that was in history, right? So we just kind of cut off real understanding for us to progress together. So I keep pointing to this, like feeling it in the body. And what's really happening, and this is second noble truth of the Buddhist teachings, is that there's clinging. There's clinging to a self. There's clinging to me. There's clinging to mine. There's clinging to a view. And so, right here, second noble truth, we can study the experience, the embodiment of clinging. I always come back to the Buddha saying, I'm studying suffering and the end of suffering. So we study the suffering. We actually want to wake up, bring consciousness to where we start to wrap around self identity and to actually feel the deep rooted pain of identification. This is how the mind learns. This is how the mind starts to let go. It's not quick necessarily. But over and over, when we feel the ouch of that, like, oh, that feels, I actually feel really hard right now, like really protected. The moment I notice that, there is the possibility of softening, of choosing a different direction, of choosing a different way. And over time, it's like a dog learning new tricks. It's like, actually, that's not freedom. Actually. So I really want to encourage, if this is something you kind of start to bring awareness to really bring this orientation of curiosity, to really, and even openness to the exploration. What is it like? What is it like? And we can celebrate any time we catch ourselves, any time we are aware. And, it can even happen on the flip, like because we're such empathic beings, our bodies resonate with each other. There might be moments where you actually feel the impact of someone's defensiveness with you, right? So to really feel that reverberation, to really experience, wow, what does that do to our connection, right? We can learn either way. Doesn't have to just be on our own. So I want to spend a little bit of time coming back to this original view of how do we practice with anatta. So we can practice with it by seeing the becoming, the selfing. And then on the flip side, we can intentionally, this is something that Rob Burbea talks about, is like we're intentionally bringing in the view of anatta. We're intentionally looking through the eyes of not self. And that was what I brought into meditation. So one is just the intention. Like I'm going to look for places, moments where I feel the unbecoming. Right? What moments that it's not just about me, it's not just personal, not mine. I think right when I said not mine, I think about like moments of generosity where it just kind of there's more of this flow, more of this allowance, less separation. And then like we can practice what was actually being practiced potentially in our sit today, which in moments of feeling pain in the body or in moments of feeling painful thought. It's not just painful. Actually, I got to be careful. It can also be blissful thoughts, blissful feelings, and to actually bring in this downbeat, this rhythm, this label of not mine, not me. And I would actually say probably doing that with the pleasant is even more like advanced, right? Not me, not mine. And so you might reflect for yourself where the easiest place in your life might be to practice this. So for some of us, it might be body sensation, Vedana, right? To practice this, not me, not mine. For others, it might be in reflecting upon people you love, plants in your garden, and to practice not me, not mine. I mean, gosh, that would be an advanced practice for me and my cat. I mean, probably not for her, definitely for me to say, not mine, not mine. And in that, really getting to be present for what shows up underneath that as we practice that disidentification. As practitioners, we're not like, what is it, automatons? We're not just like trying to like keep labeling. We need to also make space to receive the effects of what we're practicing. Something like anatta is really big and profound. And then there's ways we can also change language, right? So instead of I'm sad, there's sadness arising, right? Or defensiveness is present right now. Yeah. Just to name it already starts to give some space, right? And that it's not so personal. Who knows why sadness arises or defensiveness arises or bliss arises? There's like stories, very common story of meditators, right? Having an incredibly blissful experience, taking it very personally, wanting it, finding it, trying to find it. But even in those moments, it's arising and passing away. It's not mine. Yeah. I don't remember where this came from. I feel like I learned it from a friend, and I don't know where she learned it from. But one way to work with anatta is to really see that we are processes, right? If you think of yourself as like a 17-year-old, I mean, you're different. I'm guessing most of us are different in a lot of ways. We're a process unfolding. And we actually have no idea what's going to keep unfolding until death. We wouldn't have known earlier. So really allowing also this orientation towards your experiences. This is a process, right? I'm in process. Especially true as a meditator, right? This is a process. It has its own timing. So I'll add another quote from the Buddha. What is the perception of not self? Here, a monk, having gone to the forest, to the foot of a tree, or to an empty building, discriminates thus: the eye is not self, forms are not self, the ear, sounds, the nose, aromas, the tongue, flavors, the body, tactile sensations, the mind, things, cognizable with the mind, are not self. Thus, they remain focused on not selfness with regard to the six inner and outer sense bases. This is called the perception of not self. So it's a way of looking. It's a view of anatta. You could use any of the senses to practice this. Not self, not mine. And I'll close with back in the teacher's office, there's a really beautiful photo of Ramana Maharshi. For those of you who have been at Spirit Rock, there's the little kuti of like teachers and benefactors of Spirit Rock. And there's also the same picture of Ramana Maharshi. And in a long period of practice that I was having there, I started to visit him and stare into his eyes. There's this beautiful way he's looking in this specific photo. And just feeling the contact of just, there's this experience in looking to his eyes that it's like such direct contact. No added self between us, but kind of like intimacy, being seen in an unbridled way. And so also bringing that in, Ramana Maharshi, or also maybe teachers or beloveds who can behold you in this way of clear seeing, this way where self isn't so constructed and in the way. All right. So I'll pause there. We're going to do a little chanting at the end of the session tonight. I think we have like a good, probably 10 minutes for comments or questions. Jen has the mic. Amira already has a question. Hello, Amira. So let's see. I think I can ask to unmute you. Let's try that. Hello.
Gavrila.
Hi.
Thank you. I think it couldn't be more appropriate right now. I'm in a process that really is anatta, and I think it would just help me to share
Yeah.
that I'm in New York, East Coast time, and today is the day that I emptied my parents' house of all things that have been there for since 1950s and had to just like shed incredible shedding of calling a truck and having it all hauled away because there's no body, no mind, no ownership and no identity left here, and had to by myself go through photos and possessions and my dad's high school graduation diploma, like just like crazy stuff. and just say, this is not me. This is not me. This is not mine. And even if I'm the only one that remembers it, it's just going to flow through me, as is this house. It's going to go on to the next person. And it's just been an incredible shedding. So I just want to share that, how difficult it is, but also that it's like pushing me into, another space of anatta. Thank
Oh,
you.
wow, Amira. Can we all just like, at least in the room, can we like hold up our arms towards Amira and just give some extra fluttery comfort that we're here with you, that we're witnessing you. Thank you for sharing with us.
Thanks.
I'm so glad you came tonight and I just felt full body chills. Thank you for sharing that. Wow, what an ending, what a transition. Maybe that's the advanced practice. I said somewhere that there was a different advanced practice, but that sounds pretty advanced.
Great. I'm just going to take the mic across the room. One sec.
And for folks who share, definitely say your name first.
My name's John. This is really interesting to listen to that. I did that whole process a couple of decades ago, and right now I have a whole bunch of stuff in my house, and I have a daughter, and I've started thinking about not her experience when she's going to have to do that, and I'm going through and shedding my stuff for and it's difficult. I don't use this anymore, but what do I do with it? So it's a really interesting process to and my whole thought is I don't want Claire to have to do too much. I want it all nice and set up. So thank you.
And I'm sure she'll be so grateful. I mean, I'm not sure, but I would guess she'll be so grateful. And I'm realizing that that's another, you're both mentioning it, that sometimes an easier access point is to do it with possessions. And not necessarily to give away, but even just to practice, especially where there's places of attachment, just to be in that experience, not mine. Not mine. Ooh, it'd be edgy.
Hi, this is Douglas. Um, Thank you for this investigation. And I realized as I was like contemplating anatta and where I experienced that is coming to the Dharma hall and coming and meditating, that there's a release on the hold of self and a natural kind of commingling that happens. And I start realizing that, these are a bunch of strangers that coming in off the street that are not so different than me, that have their suffering, their attachments, their desire for awakening. And we're trying to figure it out. And in sharing that experience, there's an opportunity for me to just kind of release that hold of selfing and to release the hold on others and their selfing. And I look at, the conversations that I have in here during breaks and stuff, and how much of my story I drag in with me, because it's a challenging situation to share from a place that is not where I had laid my attachments for most of my life. And, as I've spent a lot of time with people in the Sangha here, It's just a very verdant garden ready to be planted, with new seeds as we, like awaken together here. Yeah.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Well said, well said, well said. Also heard sadhu as translated as awesome, awesome.
Time for one
Yeah.
more question.
Yeah, let's do one more, just a couple minutes. Thank you, Douglas. Beautiful.
So I'm David. Right. And something occurred to me today, and it's occurs every so often. I think when I think about my young adult children, and I experience this tremendous sadness. And then I wrote, because they're not going to be, I'm not going to be around to see them. And then I realized, well, that's just how it is. And that's freeing. It's very tender. It's very touching. Thank you.
Thank you for being willing to touch that. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it can really break our hearts to see clearly. It's a beautiful chant. Let me see if I can find it on here. Oh, I highlighted it too. Yeah. This is a chant that is actually the words of Kuan Yin in their awakening. This chant came to be. Soon I'll start I haven't played music here for a while, but I'm going to again, and this will be one that we'll kind of like study together. But when I chant this, it first of all, just in chanting it, for me, it really allows that space. It allows, yeah, this feeling of beyond the beyond concept is really the first way I learned this, moving beyond concept. And so I'll start chanting it. And then when you kind of hear the tune in yourself, just come on in. Gone, gone, gone beyond, beyond the beyond to awakening. Gate, gate, harai, gate, parasangate, bodhi swaha. Gate, gate, paradai, gate, parasangate, bodhi swaha. Yate, yate, para, yate, parasangate, bodhi swaha. Gate, gate, Para Che Para Sangha Che Bodhi Swaha. This time. Gate Gate Para Gate Para Sangate Bodhi Swaha. Taking a moment to feel the reverberations in the body. Gathering up any goodness that you experienced from your time here tonight. Feeling yourself gathering it in your heart. Any goodness, all goodness. May all beings near and far, small and big, anywhere in between, ones that are alive, ones that are now dead, ones that have yet to be born. May all beings everywhere benefit from our time here together. May all beings be safe and nourished and nurtured, cared for. May all beings everywhere feel a sense of ease and a sense of freedom from self. May all beings, excluding none, including ourselves, be absolutely free from suffering. You all, you Zoomers, feel free to say goodbye. You can unmute and have a party.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye, Sangha. Thank you, Gavrila.
Good night. Thanks.